So I think we'll start a little early at 6:27, but you were good enough to come early, and I appreciate that. My name is Dave Wolk. I'm the moderator for tonight's forum, and I want to introduce Mayor David Allaire, Commissioner of the Department of Children and Families, Sean Brown, Commander Greg Sheldon, Chair of the Rutland Town Select Board, Don Chioffi, and Rutland Town Police Chief, Ed Dumas. Chief Brian Cullen, the Rutland City Police Chief, is ill and wasn't able to come, so Commander Sheldon is here in his place. So I kind of look around this auditorium, and it has a special place in my heart. My dad was here as a student sitting there back in the mid-1930s, and I was here 55 plus years ago as a student sitting here, and then I came back in the early 90s as principal of the school, and actually the last year was Rutland High School, and then again when I had sort of a retro year as superintendent coming back 2 years ago. And what I want to say is that any time I've been in this room, everyone treated each other with respect and civility. I never had a situation here where any of my students misbehaved or were uncivil in any way. So going back to my dad in the 30s, me in the 60s, early 70s, and then as principal here in the early 90s, as superintendent after that, and then again 2 years ago, I never witnessed any disrespectful or uncivil behavior, and so that's what I expect tonight. So this forum is going to address questions and seek answers. After some brief opening thoughts from these folks here on the stage, we're going to turn the meeting over to DCF Commissioner Sean Brown. He's going to offer his presentation. He's going to address several questions that we posed to him in advance. And those are related to the program's history, the purpose, the current status, how it gets evaluated, and what are the future plans for the state going forward. So after his presentation, we'll open the floor to questions. You can come right up to this microphone here in front of me, and we prefer not to have speeches. We prefer to have, in the time that we have, questions and answers. So my role here is just to moderate the discussion. I'm sort of Switzerland here. I am the moderator. But the plague of homelessness is not endemic to Rutland. It's a national, statewide issue. And the number of unhoused families with children in Vermont has tripled in the last year. And close to 3,000 Vermonters now are living in shelters or on the street. So we're not alone. Every community is facing this challenge. Maybe a little different here. So if I have an opinion, I'm going to keep it to myself. And like you, I have more to learn about the problem. That's why we're here. And how the state will work with us on specific solutions going forward. So the state initiated the program, has not contributed support or money as of yet for the services that have been assumed by the city and the town, and it's expected that the state will offer us answers tonight. So it's good to have you here, Commissioner. Absence does not make the heart grow fonder, so we're glad you're here. And we're pleased that you are here to offer a solution. So I'm going to turn over the microphone first to Rutland City Mayor David Allaire, followed by Commander Greg Sheldon, Select Board Chair Don Chioffi, and Police Chief Ed Dumas. So I'll start with you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Dave, and I'm going to remain seated for now, if that's okay with everyone. I'd like to begin by saying I'm glad I wasn't one that was here in the 1930s. That would tell you a little bit about how old I would be. But my wife graduated from this fine establishment back in '74. I graduated in 1974 from MSJ, and throughout my tenure, both on the Board of Aldermen and as mayor, we've held numerous events here in this venue here. And I would echo what David said. I've never seen any. Everyone's been treats everybody fairly, and I know that's exactly what we're going to see tonight. So I just have some brief opening comments, and I'll try not to echo what has already been said, but I think I want to make a couple of points as we get started tonight. So over the last couple of years, the City of Rutland and also Rutland Town has been bearing an unfair and uncompensated burden that frankly the state has placed on us with the implementation of the hotel voucher program for the homeless. I think we all know that. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were all scrambling around with shutdowns, the loss of businesses, schools going remote, et cetera, et cetera. That's 2 years ago now. For us in city government, we tried to be very measured in our approach, trying to keep everyone safe while continuing to deliver services as best we could. However, with this program, a program that we had no say with its implementation or how it was going to be run, and with what I believe little thought given to the possible negative consequences it could have and has had on our communities. So with that, with what started out as very much a humanitarian effort to house folks, through no fault of their own, have found themselves in these unfortunate circumstances, has turned into something very different. In my view, a large percentage of folks housed in these hotels have no business being there. There's been no vetting, little to no oversight, with issues arising that require either a police response or our building and zoning and health officer to respond, with frankly the city losing thousands and thousands of dollars in rooms and meals revenue to the city with no compensation, and that's taxpayer money. As you remember, last year about this time I closed the Quality Inn due to health and safety violations, and I would do it again if I could. Having said all that, I know there are two sides to every story, and I too want to thank Commissioner Brown for coming down tonight. I appreciate that, for his drive down to hear our concerns, but more importantly, to find out what the plan is going forward. The city and town have a stake in this and want to be part of the solution. But I think that's key. We want to be a partner with the state. The problem of homelessness has been mentioned is not going away, but there needs to be a better solution than spending, frankly, millions and millions of taxpayer dollars on the hotel voucher program that, in my view, is a total failure. The money could easily be spent on shelters, on appropriate housing, on wraparound services, which again are appropriate for the homeless population. I want to repeat, I am willing and able to be part of the solution, but we need the state to step up and be a part of that solution. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I appreciate it. I see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd. I think this is going to be a good conversation and get some good information out, and I appreciate you all coming. Thank you.
So before Commander Sheldon speaks, if you're in the back and you want to come closer to see and hear everyone, I'll give you a moment to do that now. Just like church. Commander Sheldon.
Well, good evening, everybody. I want to thank you all for coming out this evening. I'm the individual that helped put this together with Mr. Rob Evans over here in the corner. He's being shy right now, but I want to thank Rob personally for helping me put this all together with the Commissioner's office. As Executive Director of Project Vision, I want to thank all the partners in the room that have come out tonight to learn about what the state's programs are. And that's what this is, a learning opportunity, to see what the state's plans are moving forward, to help those in the hotels and those working in the hotels. There are certain groups in this room right now, I won't call them out individually, but there are certain groups in this room who are doing wonderful work at the hotels. And from our standpoint, in the city, I'm not going to speak for Chief Dumas in hometown, our call volume is way down. I really want to shout out to you all for the great work you're doing. But there's more work to go forward. There's a lot of work still to do, and we want to make sure the barriers come down for people to get the resources and access things they need. But there are a lot of people, a lot of players, and we want to make sure everybody understands what's happening. That's why this meeting was put together. It wasn't put together to come here and argue and be rude to other people. It was designed so you all learn and relearn, because we're learning right along with you what the Commissioner is going to talk about tonight. So please take this opportunity, listen to what's being said. No good idea ever came through an open mouth. So let's just try to be cordial to each other and listen to what's being said. If you have questions, there's time at the end. And we're going to have an opportunity to ask the Commissioner, the Mayor, whoever about what your questions are, and you can get answers hopefully tonight. If not, we'll get back to you with that. If you come up with questions later on, please email me at the station. I will try to get the answers for you if you can't get them out tonight or they come into your mind later on. Okay? So thank you all for showing up. Thank you for the partners in the room at Project Vision. We appreciate your support and all the work you do.
And this is Rutland Town Select Board Chair Don Chioffi.
Thank
Thank you, Dave. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for including us in this conversation. Commander Sheldon was saying that before we started, it's hot in here, and I said it isn't anywhere near as hot as it was in 1963 when I graduated on this very stage. And we were respectful. Yes, we were, well, for the most part. We took our lumps, but we were respectful. I didn't have any gross opening remarks except to say that I echo every single word of the mayor's statement is shared by the town of Rutland and myself, the chair of the board. This has been a terrible stress on the town of Rutland's law enforcement community. To give you some statistical evidence so that you can put this in perspective, our police budget this year was $507,712. And the town recently, over the past 7 years, worked very hard to present to the taxpayers a proposal to fund a full-time police department, and we did. And the community supported us so that we could get patrolling in the community and good law enforcement for Rutland Town citizens. That has not been possible under today's situation. Calls for service that we had in 2022 COVID were 148 total, with 51 coming from the Allaire/Cortina. In 2021, those calls went up to 515. 196 were from the Cortina. In 2022, this year, in just the first 3 months through April, we had 487 calls, and 186 of them were from Cortina, over half. So we're on a projected schedule this year to have 1,461 calls in the southern sector, based on this total homeless situation there. So we're now 10 times the calls for service that we were pre-COVID. And, well, you can see what that would do to any budget. There's no time for these police officers to perform their services for the townspeople in Rutland Town, the citizens and the residents and taxpayers that are paying their salary, because they're totally consumed with calls from this area. Now, the 558 calls in 22-23 represent a 4 times increase in call volume alone. And this doesn't even include the administrative follow-up. We've had to put out a full-time dispatcher, which the townspeople did approve. Again, the board appropriated and squirreled the money out of someplace so that we could put a dispatcher on full-time to carry this administrative load. So basically, what we need is a contribution of about $42,000 a month to sustain this effort. The hotel owners are getting, so we've been told anyway, and we can confirm that tonight with Mr. Brown, $189 a room per day. That's about $5,670 a month per room. So the revenue from only 7.4 rooms will pay for Rutland Town Police Services, which are now being provided. And you know, when I talk about the amount of taxpayer dollars that are being put in, not to serve Rutland Town residents, but to serve this particular facility that's been established by the state, you know, and that's kind of whining and crying financially. But the fact of the matter is, we are providing the services. Our police department is a dedicated police department, so they're not saying no, they're just doing whatever they can do, and they're stressed out. They're totally maxed out. I mean, there is absolutely no time, and between the time that they're putting in and the time they have to spend back in the office with administrative paperwork, it's incredible cost. So anyways, that amount of money is only 5% of the total revenue or the gross revenue that this venture is paid for their rooms. So Rutland Town's asking someone to pay 5% of the net gain on this particular project to sustain the services that we're providing, which are needed. And as far as the homeless situation is concerned, no one wants to deny a reasonable standard of living for anyone in this world that needs it. There's definitely a need here, but there's also an abuse, because there are people coming in from out of state that have no relationship whatsoever to this area. How they got here, I don't know. It could be internet, it could be a network of calling or whatever, but they're coming from elsewhere. And this is a hard thing for a small community of 4,200. The town of Rutland is a community of 4,200 people, and right now, and for the past 2.5 years, we have been #1 on the state's list of the number of people housed in a facility in the state of Vermont. We're #1, we're first at 4,200 people. That's not appropriate, it's not correct, and it's not fair to our citizens. And I'll turn it over to Police Chief at Dumas for some particulars on what they have to deal with.
So thanks for coming in today. We really appreciate it. Just go over some quick facts here. Don may have graduated in '63. I was born in '63. When he talks about the call volume in the town of Rutland, he's talking about only the southern end of town of Rutland, not the rest, because you guys aren't familiar with how the city and the town are laid out. The town is the donut that surrounds the donut hole of Rutland City. So we have to go back and forth across Rutland City to answer calls. Most of our residents live in the northeast, northwest sections of the town. There's a few in center Rutland, but not that many. That's where the majority of our people live. And the majority of those people pay the taxes for us to work there. And they've been awesome supporting us. I'm thankful for that. Since prior to doing this, I worked at the Child First Advocacy Center. The town hired me as a chief, and I did that job. I retired from the city. But I love being a police officer so much, I figured I might as well stay a little bit longer. So in 2020, Ted Washburn, my deputy chief, said he was really busy. The town pulled me out of there to go help him on the road, to put this uniform back on, to stop helping the kids that are victims of sexual assaults and serious bodily injury cases. So I stopped doing that 3 months early. That cost my budget, or the town's budget, the police budget, $15,000 for that alone, to pull me out of there, and left them short dealing with the issues that they have to deal with, which are horrendous, as you can imagine. Our fiscal year, we start putting our budgets together back in November. So now the fiscal year budget of 21-22, I'm already $60,000 in the hole. We're running the red now because they had to pull me out of there early to deal with the issues at the Cortina Inn. And I'm not going to be politically correct here. I'm just going to be blunt. I'm going to come to you and tell you the way it is as a police officer. I'm a chief, but I'm on the road working with my guys almost every day, 5 days a week, sometimes more. So I know it's difficult, and I'm sorry that there's homeless people. But some of these people are drug addicts. They're homeless because they're drug addicts, and then they have mental health issues, or a combination there of both. And just because they have these issues does not give them the right to have a house. To give them a place to stay and have free reign is total chaos down there. In 2020, that's the way it was. There was nothing. The hotel owners did nothing to help us. They didn't know what to do. All they did know is to collect cash. And that's when I made a big stink. And when I got a hold of Greg, and he got a hold of the DCF, we set together a meeting to set up something to try to eliminate some of the problems. They had security come, outside security, from up in Burlington and whatnot, but again, they're just, they're security. They don't have arrest authority, okay? And on top of that now, I'm for the victims of the crime. That's what I work for. And I do my job for the town of Rutland. That's what I represent here. I'm telling you now, I can speak for every officer in the state of Vermont, I bet you anything, is we're tired of dealing with the same people over and over and over again, 5, 6 times, sometimes in one day. In the old days, 1990, 2000, before they had bail reform, we could put that person in jail if they broke into a store and stole beer more than once. Now they can do it 6 times a day, and we get them back out and we're doing the same thing. We're like shoveling whatever, it's like against the tide. It's not helping us at all. Our legislatures have legislated this. The judges, if you read the paper, there's people down there that pulled a knife on a woman that worked down there. We put them in jail. The state police did that. What happens? They finally put her in jail. Then they let her out on her own recognizance with her parents, and she's back out again. She's doing the same thing. Stole from them, and she's back doing the same thing. So this is the issues we're dealing with as police officers. As far as the workload, the people there that have helped down there, thank you. I appreciate it. But it's a dam. It's a water. It's flowing so hard. There's nobody that can stop it. We had a RUTSTAT meeting where the Rutland Health was there. They had the LIT team there, and they're getting the same. We're inundated. The state stuck these people there with all these issues, and now we can't give services for them because they don't have enough bodies to deal with all the issues that these people are having. And that's just the way it is. I talked to the person who runs the CFAC, Wendy Dumas, 30 to 60 days out to have somebody, for one of those folks, to have somebody see somebody with a mental health problem, a victim of a sexual assault, has to wait that long before they can actually talk to somebody. So to have all these people down there need all these services.
Excuse me, can I speak?
Yes, you can.
I'm sorry, I need to speak because...
Well, let me just finish. I'm almost done. I'm almost done.
We're going to reserve the questions and answers for all of you. We want you to come up to the microphone at that time. But we're going to hear from everyone first, and then we invite you to come up. You'll be first. We'll invite you to come up to the microphone,
because
okay?
I have a lot of questions.
Okay, thank you.
So at this point in time, there's 3 of us that are working with it. Myself, Chief Washburn, and Officer Placus. Between the 3 of us, we probably have over 100 open cases. I cannot do as good a job to help victims of crime if I'm this busy. We have to pick and choose, okay, this is important, this is serious, we have to do this one. We can't do all the other ones we're doing over here. If we get time, we'll do it. But that's where I'm at this point in time. The town is spending, I'm spending 90% of my time dealing with all the issues that are coming from the homeless population that the state put down there at the 14 end. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
So some of you came in after we started, and for your benefit, this is Commissioner Sean Brown, who is the Commissioner of the Department of Children and Families, and he had been sent a lot of questions related to this program, how it started, the purpose, current status, how it's evaluated, what the future plans are. So he's going to talk about those questions because he had those in advance. And then, when he's finished, one by one, and you'll be first, come right up to the microphone. I'd like you to state your name and address. And please don't give a speech because a lot of people here want to talk, but ask a question. So we appreciate that. Commissioner Brown, you're next.
Thank you, and I'm happy to be here today with everyone. We're here in the spirit of collaboration and solutioning as well. I am Sean Brown, the Commissioner of the Department for Children and Families. With me today I have Rob Evans, who's a security consultant from Margolis Healy that we began contracting with during the pandemic to help address some of the security issues across the state and the hotels where we're housing some homeless Vermonters. And then also here today we have Adam Sancic, who's the AHS Field Director for this area as well. Thank you for being here, Adam, as well. The General Assistance Emergency Housing Program has existed in Vermont for decades. It's historically been a very restricted program in terms of eligibility, who is eligible, and for how many nights someone receives services. And it was solely funded by state general fund dollars. In the year prior to the pandemic, the state probably spent about $6 million of general fund in the program. The categories where you were eligible, there was 3 ways. One, what we call the catastrophic categories. If you were fleeing sexual or domestic violence and were homeless as a result of that. If you lost your home due to fire or flood, or if you were constructively evicted and lost your own housing due to no fault of your own, you were eligible for up to 84 days of housing in a 12-month period We also had a category called vulnerable category, where you were eligible for up to 28 days in a 12-month period, where if you were over age 60, if you were a family with a child under age 6, if you were a woman who was pregnant in your 3rd trimester of pregnancy, you were eligible under that category. And then in recent years, before the pandemic, a new category emerged, the adverse weather conditions, so that during the winter, if the weather hit certain criteria, temperatures and wind chill, or precipitation, the rules were relaxed, and anyone who's homeless could be housed while those weather conditions were in effect. Prior to the pandemic, at its height, we may have housed 250 to 300 households on a night during the adverse weather. And so, you know, that was the scope, and about $6 million. When the pandemic hit, you know, there was a lot of unknowns, there was a lot of fear, and particularly how the virus was spread, and the governor issued the stay home, stay safe order, and we realized that congregate settings and the homeless were particularly vulnerable, and a decision was made to waive the eligibility rules that March, because we were ending the adverse weather, and that anyone who was homeless and had no place to stay or the resources to pay was able to be housed during the early stages of the pandemic. And our numbers started to grow at that point as households with vulnerable members asked other members to leave. We know from our work in serving the homeless that many homeless households couch surf or stay with family or friends on a regular basis, and they were asked to leave as a result of the pandemic and the fear of becoming sick with people coming or going for work or appointments or whatnot, and so our numbers started to grow from that as well. And then as we move further into the pandemic, what we've seen is the housing market has become incredibly challenging in the state of Vermont, and that has led to an increase of homelessness. Households that have been renting in the same place for years, the buildings are now being sold and they're being asked to leave, so the landlords can take advantage of selling the building and with the seller's market that it is right now, and make significant profits from the sale of their building, and that is leading to a large surge of homelessness. And Vermont has really not built up the amount of affordable and mid-income housing over the years that it really needs to keep pace with the population in Vermont, and that has been challenging as well. And so the initial decision was made to continue to open up the program to homeless households, and also allowed individuals staying in shelters to avail themselves of a hotel room, because those were congregate settings, and we were afraid that if someone got sick, they could quickly spread the virus. And so our shelter system closed down, and in any given day, there are over 500 households or individuals in the shelter system in Vermont, and so they came into the program as well. And so our numbers grew over time to, at one point, a program that might serve 200 to 250 to 300 at its peak, and any time grew to almost 2,100 households at the peak of the pandemic participating in the program. We quickly realized that this was straining communities, particularly communities that had a large number of hotels participating in the program, and so we started to work to increase the services available in the program. You know, we brought on Rob Evans and his company to help us contract for security with law enforcement and security companies. We also tried to work with the designated mental health agencies to have on-site mental health staff on the hotels. Many of them are staffing challenged right now. I think a third of their positions are open across the state right now, so they're challenged. Law enforcement, the sheriffs who we try to contract with, have been struggling with staffing as well, so we've had to rely on security companies more than certified law enforcement, which would be our preference, to provide security at some of the motels in this area, being Rutland being one of them. We also implemented, because people were supposed to stay in their hotel room to stay, to stop the spread in the early days, we started a mass feeding program. to help deliver meals to keep people from moving about and going out and seeking food. And so that ran for like the first 6 months of the program. All of that work was being funded and is currently being funded by the federal government through the Federal Emergency Management Agency administration. So 100% of our costs in this program are currently being funded by FEMA. However, those funds expire at the end of this month, and I can speak to the transition that will happen at the end of this month. As vaccines were becoming available well over a year ago, the legislature asked us to come up with a plan to start winding this program down. And so we worked with housing advocates, not this past session, but the session before, came up with a plan to start imposing new eligibility criteria and move households out of the program. The legislature passed that, and we began to implement it during that summer and into the fall when the Delta surge started, and which then transitioned into the Omicron. And then the legislature started becoming concerned that we were asking households to leave the motel program, and asked us to pause fully implementing that while they had an opportunity to reconsider a new path forward during the next legislative session, the one that we just finished, came out of. And so there was a pause put in place, and we kept people in the program at that point. We have been successfully rehousing households permanently. Since the start of the pandemic, we've rehoused about 1,800 households out of the program. However, homelessness is a serious issue in the state right now, and households are facing eviction on a regular basis, and so new households are coming into the program as other households are transitioning out. And so as of today, we have about 1,635 households in the program. In Rutland, there are 326 households, 402 adults, 114 kids. That's a staggering statistic that there are 114 homeless kids living in hotels. None of us think that's an ideal situation, but at this point, it's a roof over their head, and it allows them a place to call home. It's not a great place to call home. It's not permanent housing, and we are working hard to try to find permanent housing for these households. And I can get into some of the initiatives that we're working on with other partners to build more housing and shelter capacity across the state. But backing up to this past session, the legislature reassessed where we were at because of the Delta and the Omicron surge, and afraid that we would be spreading the virus more and more if we ended this program. So they passed legislation, I think it was unanimous, asking us to keep the program in place through the end of this month, through the end of June. And so that is the legal basis that we're working under now, that the legislature has asked us to continue, or legislated us that this program run under the relaxed conditions through the end of this current month. And so we are planning a transition where at the end of June, the emergency housing program will revert back to those prior rules that I explained as I started, with the catastrophic and the vulnerable categories. And then we will be transitioning to a new program that will be funded with 100% federal dollars, but it will not be an emergency housing program. It will not be a crisis program. It's a transitional housing program. The federal government issued out emergency rental assistance money to all of the states. Vermont received about $350 million of emergency rental assistance dollars, and those dollars are going to be used to fund this new program. It will be a private relationship between the household and the hotels who are choosing to participate in this new program effective July 1st. We are helping facilitate that with the development of occupancy agreements and applying for that federal funds for those households to pay their monthly rent for that room. But it will no longer be a part of the general assistance program on July 1st. So that is a transition that is coming up. And there will be rules in place, again, for households that they need to follow. You know, when the rules were relaxed, you know, normally if someone did something that called the attention of law enforcement, they would be asked to leave the program, and there would be a period of ineligibility. Prior to the pandemic, they would not be eligible to come back into the program for a set number of days, and if there was another offense and they were asked to leave once they came back in, they would serve another period of ineligibility, which was longer. Those rules were waived really in response to the pandemic to keep households safe and to keep Vermonters safe in general. Those rules do go back into place on July 1st. And so, you know, we will see some change in how participants in the program stay in the program, access the program, and the length of time they'll be in the program. So in many households that are in the program now won't be eligible for the GA program. They will use their 12-month days. They will be eligible to come into the new transitional housing program. Many households are choosing to do that. Some are not. But if they are asked to leave, we will help them find another hotel to work with them. If not, then they will need to do that work on their own, and then we would assist them in getting their rent paid, but they are not participating in the general assistance program. We are still actively working to provide as much services as we can to the community. Since the pandemic started, we have spent close to $10 million in the Rutland community providing services through the local service providers to support homeless Vermonters in your community. That's in addition to the cost of the hotels. We do want to partner. We recognize there's been an impact in the community, and we've been meeting in other areas of the state with other impacted communities to support them and try to work with them in collaborative ways. And you have our commitment that we're here. I'm here for that reason. We want to support the town of Rutland. We want to support the city of Rutland, and we want to support, you know, the homeless people participating in the program, and we want to support the residents of Rutland. I mean, that is our goal, is to be good partners, and we want to make sure that we reduce the impact in your communities and your services to the greatest extent possible, and we are committed to that work. You know, in terms of the emergency rental assistance funding, right now, given some new federal funding requirements, the money we have available for this new program that starts July 1st is only available for the next state fiscal year, starting July 1st through next June 30th. At that point, there is not a concrete plan of what happens next. That is the work that's going to happen in this upcoming legislative session. Some decisions will need to be made. Historically, when the emergency housing program started increasing in participation and cost to the actual state, we were asked to restrict eligibility, just given that state dollars are not endless. And so I don't know if the program will be funded to serve 1,600 households next year. That's the work we need to work with the legislature. And so I would engage with your local legislative delegation regarding this program and the budget, and you know, particularly once you know who they will be after the election in November. I think a lot of the legislators are moving on, and there'll be a new slate. But that will be the work that will start next fall in developing proposals and working with the legislature to see what our policymakers and you know, and what they want to appropriate for funds to support homeless Vermonters beyond the next state fiscal year. So at this point, I can only tell you what I know, which is this emergency program ends on July 1st and goes back to its old self, very restrictive, and this new transitional housing program starts for the next 12 months. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. I am curious about something. We've heard about the amount of money that's being spent. Are there any hotel owners here? We have a vantage point. We don't see any hands go up. We don't see any hands go up. So here is what we're going to do. And yes, you're first. Please come up to the microphone, and I'd like everyone to say, give us your name, address, and to whom your question is to be addressed. And I would ask you not to make any speeches, but to be very direct with your questions. Let us know who you'd like to ask a question, so name, address, and who you want to address it to. And this will give everyone who has a question a chance to address it. So you can, if you want, line up or come close to the microphone if you have any questions. So the floor is yours.
First of all, my name is Lisa. Actually, I live at one of the motels while we're here. I don't represent anybody, and I am not here to represent anybody. But there are some questions I have. First of all, I had these 3 note cards full. Okay. One of my questions, officer, you sat there and you said that, you know, about the mental health and the druggies and everything else. Okay, I see your point, but why shouldn't the mental health be helped?
I didn't say it should not be helped. I'm saying there's no services, there's not enough services to help.
So,
what I'm making is that they're 30 to 60 days out for an outpost. There's not enough people in, as they said, they're 30% down in their staffing. Say, stop all these people here and there's no services to help them. They said they spent $10
So
million.
what can we do to
We don't
change
see
that?
where it is.
Alderman, what can we do to change that?
I think that's directed to you. Yeah, I think so.
Can you repeat that? I think I
What
don't
is
think you heard.
that, what can you do to change that? To change that we all get the mental health that we need, so that the officers are not being bombarded.
Kind of like what would be the difference from now versus not having this program be here?
I've been
Like,
trying to
if
get
this
this
program isn't here, what's going to change with the mental health? If we don't have enough then what are we going to do now? Because even without the hotels, I think the main problem is the mental health. People need help.
So I'm going to ask
either
you.
way, whether the hotel's there or
No,
not,
she's-
they still need help. Like, what's going to be done about the mental health? How are we going to get them help, whether or not the hotel's there or not?
Okay, so the question's about mental health.
So we're certainly aware of the challenges in the mental health system right now. I'll just say that the pandemic has stretched much of the fabric of our social safety net in the state of Vermont, our healthcare system, our mental health system. And so, you know, we work as part of the Agency of Human Services. I work closely with our Department of Mental Health, and we work with our designated agencies.
Yeah, so we have to worry about being put on the streets.
So what we're trying to do is to get more resources to the mental health providers so that they can hire qualified staff and retain those staff. Because right now, much of their issue is that they're not able to hire and retain qualified staff. And so the legislature did appropriate increased funding for them to be able to provide higher wages and benefits to attract staff, so that we can be able to start whittling down those wait lists and make sure people have access to services sooner, and there are not wait lists.
Okay, now my next question. I was not a fan of the lead team, as you all know. I was not a fan. But because of them, they have helped me get on my feet. They have helped me look for a place. They are helping me in ways I didn't even know existed, and I'm a pretty smart person. You know me, Dave. They've helped me a lot. And you guys, what are you guys doing to help them? Because they're the ones that are out noticed, but when I'm noticed, they're the ones keeping this shit together for you guys. No, excuse my English. But I haven't seen cops here as much as I have the Econo, Wardwell, and Sheldon. And it's the little team that has been doing all the work to keep that safe. What are you guys going to do to help them? Are you going to work with them?
So, you know, at the start of the pandemic, we put out requests for proposals in this community for providers to support Vermonters living in the homeless Vermonters living in the hotels. LIT was the one organization that responded. All the other homeless providers were not in a position due to staffing to provide increased services. They were new to Vermont, and so, you know, and new to the Vermont contracting process. We did give a contract to them through our Office of Economic Opportunity to provide support services in the motels. Hotels also have contracted directly with LIT and are paying them to be in the hotel.
What is the state doing?
And we're paying the fees for the hotels to pay LIT right now.
So you guys are making sure they have everything they need to help people like us?
Yeah, and
That's
we're
what
trying
I'm
to bring in additional
You give
resources.
them the tools, right?
We are providing the hotel owners the financial resources to pay LIT right now.
Why are you not working directly with them? Because wouldn't that help a lot of the homeless?
So, we, given a new organization, and we do periodic reviews of organizations in our grant agreement, and we did that with LIT, and we found some areas that were not in compliance with the way that we need to contract with providers. And so we needed to end our direct contractual relationship with LIT, and did not renew our agreement with them when it expired in March. However, they are still being contracted by the hotel owners themselves to provide services on site.
So you guys don't want nothing to do with them? Even though they're the ones that are saving,
They are being
that
provided,
helps the people.
they are being provided technical assistance to try to come into compliance with contracting protocols and requirements that would allow the state possibly to contract with them again, but given some of the findings, we're just not in a position to do that directly, but the hotel owners have decided to do that directly themselves, as other hotels in the state have done with other providers, and we are paying an increased fee per room night to fund their work.
So what I'm going to say is you've got a long line behind you, and what I'm going to ask you to do is if your questions weren't answered, you come back after they get their turn, okay?
I got one more question.
If it's real quick, yes.
What are you going to do other than build housing for the homeless?
So is that one for me?
Yeah.
Well, I wish I had the funds in order to build the housing for the homeless. That's
Does the
something.
state give you guys that?
I'm sorry?
Does government give you guys the funding to do that?
The city has not received any funding to do that. This is something that we want to work, that's why I mentioned in my opening remarks that whatever we do going forward, when this program winds down, is it's going to have to be a partnership with the state, because we just don't have the resources at the city level to fund the kind of housing that needs to be done for the homeless.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So come right up to the microphone again, name, address, and to whom you'd like to address your question.
Hi, my name is Nicole Evers. I am the medical coordinator for Life Intervention. First, I would like to address Sean Brown. In the conversation prior to me, you had stated that we are contracted with the hotels, but correct me if I'm wrong, you guys do cut checks to us, correct? For the annex and the Old Hilltop?
As an owner of a hotel, we do.
Okay, so you do cut checks to us, is it yes or no?
Yeah, because
Okay.
you've subleased
Okay, thank you.
the annex from the hotel, and you're running it as a hotel.
Yep, I just, thank you. Yes or no, can you answer that?
As a hotel operator, yes.
Okay. And Dumas, my question to you. Earlier you had stated that an individual that has mental health or addiction, that does not qualify them, correct? For housing, is that correct?
I did say something like that, yes.
Okay. So are you aware that in the last 3 months, the Life Intervention team has connected over 100+ individuals to primary care physicians, Rutland Mental Health, MAP programs? Are you aware of that?
I am not.
Well, now you are. Thank you.
Excuse me, if I could address that. One of the reasons that we're up here right now, and that Sean is being so gracious as to answer these questions, is there has been such a lack of transparency in this program that nobody knows what is being done.
Well, the nasty message is from John.
As the town of Rutland, dealing with the number of calls that we've dealt with, the town of Rutland felt that it had a responsibility and a right to know how many people have been placed in permanent housing since the program started, by the month, how many people have been placed in jobs.
Who's reached out to us though to figure that out? Nobody.
Well,
So I'm going to ask you
Nobody.
to hold your question. We have now a dozen people politely waiting their turn. You're on.
Hello, I'm not quite sure who this question is going to go to. My name is Tina Dumas. I'm a Rutland Town resident. I am also the executive director of the Open Door Mission here in Rutland. We're 51 at Sheldon, just so you know that. My question is this: what is the criteria for these folks to get into the hotels? And second part of it, what happens if they, A, break the law, B, don't stay with the rules at the facility they're in? Are they asked to be removed? What happens? I'm curious, because we have rules for facility operations, so I'd like to know what they are.
Yes, under the rules, under the Budget Adjustment Act that the legislature passed, asking us to continue this program, they asked us to run it under the adverse weather conditions, which are, many of the rules are suspended so that anyone who's homeless, does not have another place to stay, or the resources to pay for a place to stay, is eligible for the program.
Yes,
and so that's the criteria there. And normally, if someone breaks a rule of the establishment, they are asked to leave and they serve a period of ineligibility. Under adverse weather, that is waived because the goal is to keep people safe. And we're in a pandemic, and so the goal is to try to keep people safe. Starting July 1st, the rules regarding that go back into place, and if someone violates the rule, they will be asked to leave the program and would not be eligible for 30 days to come back in. So the rules do change in a couple of weeks in that respect.
So they're only banned, they're out for 30 days. If there's somebody that gets caught stealing or gets something else, they still have 30 days to come back to the hotel. I'm just curious.
Yeah, depending on the seriousness of the offense, you know, we do have the ability to look at other avenues of serving that individual, because sometimes when someone has done something in a hotel, they're not allowed back in. Sometimes we will try to find them a room in another hotel. Sometimes they're banned from that hotel as well, and so at some point we have situations where we're not able to offer another hotel to an individual, and then refer them to a shelter or some other organization to try to support them in finding permanent housing, because they wouldn't be able to be housed in a motel. So it can be a very fact-based determination depending on the individual.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I do want to say one thing before I sit down. You said that you spoke to different homeless organizations before you started to try and work with them. I've never received a call, nor had my predecessor, Sharon Russell, ever received a call from the state on placing people with mission. And we're a nonprofit that doesn't receive any state funds. Just curious, that's all. Thank you very much, Sheldon.
Thank you. Next, ma'am, name, address, and to whom you'd like to address your question.
Well, my name is Wanda, and I'm staying at Quality Inn. You tell me, I don't know who to talk to about this, I make $800 a month on Social Security. Where are the apartments for the low income people?
Okay.
$1,000 a bedroom or $1,000 for a studio. You can't do it with my income. The lit team has helped me get the paperwork that I need for an apartment and sign up for things that I need. But you tell me where somebody that is on Social Security at $800 find a place to live.
Rhonda, you are absolutely spot on, correct. And as a part of our work in this, another piece of the housing plan that the governor pushed forward and was funded by the legislature is that hundreds of millions of dollars have been set aside to build permanent housing for the homeless and low-income Vermonters across the state, but it's going to take time for those projects to be built. And one of the areas that we really need to focus on is your community here in Rutland. Many other communities have got projects that have been approved and are being built, but
they're still running the prices sky high because of what has happened the last 2 years. I cannot afford that. I am in a motel because I can't afford an apartment. I have people that has helped me, the team has helped me a lot. Oh, and I lost my son at the beginning of May. Who did I have to talk to? I went and talked to them. Who do I talk to? I went back to them to talk to them because it hurt so bad. So that's the only thing my son asked me to do, was to stay safe and get my own place. But how can you do it if there's no funds for anything?
Well, one, I'm sorry for your loss of your son. I mean, it's got to be tragic. And when I say we want to build affordable housing, we want it to make it so that you can afford it on your $800 a month income, that either through getting another rental subsidy or that it's built subsidized so that your rent is just a portion of your income. That is what's missing in this state.
I also have a service dog. A lot of places, no service dogs are allowed. No dog this, no cat this, no nothing. You know?
If they're not allowing a service dog, I'd like to know about it because they're violating the American
And you look in the paper or anywhere, they say, no service dogs allowed in the apartment under no circumstances. That's not fair to me.
No, that's discrimination. We need to, and we need to confront that.
But the what team has helped me keep my dog, well, both my dogs and my cat, keep me safe and sane, and I ain't out doing drugs, and I ain't drinking, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but yet, where do you stop the BS?
Thank you.
So if I could just say a couple of things. The LIT team's been mentioned a couple of times so far, and I appreciate getting feedback like that. That's the kind of stuff that we need to know about, both at the state level and the city level. I meet with Kareem on a fairly regular basis, and he tries to update me on what's going on as far as his vantage point. And hearing this from the residents gives me a lot of satisfaction to know that you're doing good things down there. I know you're well represented here tonight, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor.
My name is Ernest LaRose. I live at 4 Marble Avenue. And first off, I want to thank all police officers for what they do. They are doing a job that nobody wants. They're being thanked? No. And my second is to the mayor. Is this city having the police officer problem such as Rutland Town?
Yes, we are.
Why?
Because, unfortunately, in this environment, nobody wants to be a police officer.
And I don't understand that. I have a daughter-in-law that's a police officer, and I keep telling her to quit.
And it's almost impossible to do.
You know, I mean, is it so hard to get them in, or is it hard to keep them? Which one?
Oh, I think it's mostly it's hard to get them in. The folks that have left for legitimate reasons, through changes in their family situations. I know Greg could answer this better than I, but from what I've seen, the group that we have is dedicated, hardworking, and they want to do a good job for the city of Rutland.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. I know quite a few of the police officers. Is a 60-year-old man too old to be a police officer?
Well, in your case, maybe not.
I'm not 67, sir. I mean, I'm not 60, I'm 67. But anyway, I was talking to a police officer the other day, and I said, geez, you still working for Rutland City? He said, no, they let me go. Well, what do you mean they let you go? Here's the time they need you the most. Well, I turned 60, and they said I was too old. I'm wondering if that's true. During the problem you're having with police officers, and you're letting go a good police officer. And as far as the motels go, we have a lot of them in the area. We got no room for the tourists that want to spend their money here. And if they're not stopping in here, they're going to Killington to stay, and they're spending their money there. I don't know if it's in your power. I don't know what Rutland Town could do about it. but couldn't there be a limit to the number of people that are put in to these motels and send the rest up to Phil's house? Just a thought. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Dick Corsell. I'm Chief Executive Officer for Community Care Network, which is Rutland Mental Health Services, which is the designated agency in Rutland County. I'm accompanied this evening by my Chief Services Officer for Behavioral Health, my Director of Substance Use Disorders, my Director of Adult Mental Health Services, my Director of Emergency Services, and our clinician who's embedded with the Rutland City Police Department. Commissioner, it is not my nature to call out public officials in public, but I'm going to do it. The state of Vermont is not, let me repeat, not providing funding to Rutland Mental Health Services to deal with all of the issues that are coming from the hotels. In addition, let me state again, the state of Vermont has for decades woefully, inadequately funded the community mental health and substance use disorder system in this state. And because it has done so, we are seeing the result. We are unable to respond. We receive a very small amount of money, which each year we have to beg for, to allow us to serve the individuals at Lincoln Place, which is a model for how things get done. The fact of the matter is that we have been capped, the entire designated agency system have been capped with funding for 4 going on 5 years. We do not have the capacity to respond. Our emergency services folks, who are incredibly skilled clinicians and case managers, are available 24/7. We can't keep up, and we are not funded. So I want to make that very, very clear that this funding is not coming to us. And the workforce shortage is beyond the pale right now. So I think it's important for the state of Vermont to recognize this. I'm thankful for many of our legislators that are here that have fought for the designated agency system, knowing that it is the backbone of the mental health and behavioral health system in the communities. But the state of Vermont is not providing the resources to help us deal with what we're dealing with now. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, I don't have a question. Basically, the commissioner earlier said that there was funding. We haven't seen it.
That's going to be a hard one to top. Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Kristen Hathaway. I am a resident of Rutland Town, and I am also the Director of Finance and Human Resources for the Rutland Housing Authority. As Chief Dumas has attested before, the Rutland Housing Authority works hard to make sure that people we house are held to a standard of conduct. One of the reasons we are so successful is because both the Rutland Housing Authority staff and our residents are held to strict regulations through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Many crimes grow out of desperation, and it's difficult to legislate people out of desperation. Housing is a significant contributing factor to desperation. Creating new housing tends to be disproportionately placed on organizations like ours to generate. Commissioner, you mentioned that the state is budgeting for the creation of more housing to help curb this situation. There's a difference between providing money and providing units. Will these units be created by the state, or are there more sustainable and permanent solutions being planned?
So Vermont uses a model where we have the Vermont Housing Conservation Board. It's a nonprofit that's located at Montpelier. And the funding is provided to that organization, and then they work with communities and community organizations to propose and develop projects. And I think there was some recent apartments that were created here for families that was funded through that process. And so, yeah, so they're currently accepting proposals for the funding that's been allocated by the legislature, and going through and then working with the developer and the communities. Share the information necessarily our area of expertise. We do have staff that provide technical assistance to community partners who want to submit a proposal, and we actually have a member on the board that helps review and approve the projects. And so those dollars are available. They review them quarterly. They accept them quarterly and review them. And so an additional dollars were just appropriated that will be made available on July 1st. And so I'm here to urge the community and to take advantage of those. It's really like several hundred millions of dollars. It's once in a lifetime opportunity to really make a difference to support homeless Vermonters. We want to make sure Rutland is taking advantage of those opportunities as well as the other communities that are doing that right now as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Good evening. My name is Kareem Chapman. I am the founder of Life Intervention Team and Executive Director of Vermont Psychiatric Survivors. I do have a question, but my question is not just for the panel, it's for the community. And I need to speak to the community. I've heard people say, who are you guys? What are you doing? By a show of hands, who knows somebody that may be homeless or on their way to be homeless? Okay, by a show of hands, who knows someone who's one paycheck away from possibly being homeless? Okay. Do we agree that we should help people by a show of hands?
Not a hammock.
Now, we do not believe in giving out handouts. We were called to help out a crisis that was happening when other organizations could not or did not respond. We are a 24-hour program. We help support people from mental health issues, drug abuse issues, anything dealing with life crisis, we help support them. And we ask the community to always just help us. Stop pointing fingers and pointing out things that are going wrong. Be a part of the solution. Stop always pointing out what's going wrong. We are a new organization here to try to help. We are an extension of you. Everybody listening, please stand up. These are the people every day, 24 hours a day, who are working with this population, helping them do the best that they can. There are people with lived experience. There are people who have been homeless themselves at one point in life. They are here to help. We need the community to be a part of this support, not point fingers and say, hey, who are they? What are they doing? Can you please help us? Please help us. We need support. Not fingers pointing. That's all I have.
May I ask you a question which gives us that?
Quickly. Yes, ma'am.
Sir, I'm glad to hear all the positive feedback from the people that you're here to serve. As a provider in the community who I believe we've had shared clients that are reporting to me that you guys are going to get in touch with us. I'd like to figure out a way to do that because I don't think we're able to support you if you're not having communication with the other providers.
So we've given out brochures at the front. We've given out about over 100 already. So if you get a brochure, if you want one, we can give one to you. Our information is there. You can call us. We have managers, departments that can help out.
So I would like to collaborate.
Okay, I will be here at the end of this. You can talk to me. And to Officer Dumas and Commissioner Commander Mark Stockton, thank you guys for the support you did give us. We have been supported by you. I know it's not easy. I know you guys have a hard job, but we got to do this together. We have to do it together. We're not going to fix this problem if we are pointing fingers at each other and trying to figure it out. If we do not get it right, guess what, Vermont? We got a bigger problem in our hands. So we want to be here to help, and that's who we are. We appreciate you, and thank you so much.
Hello, my name is George Birch. I'm a recovering addict and I reside at the Cortina. I'm really here today. You know, everyone was invited to come to this meeting who wanted to attend it from each motel room. I'm here for the kids that can't be here. There should be in place something for these kids so they don't reside around this PTSD. I've been to almost every meeting, and my question is, when are you going to open up the pool? When are you going to open up the gym? I donate my time. I love kids, you know. I hang out with them, skateboard and stuff. But as you know, no hotel owner is here, and I keep getting from them, oh, we're working on it. We're working on it. Do they work with you, or do you guys got to tell them they got to open it? Because the people that were saying they can't get their dogs in, you said that's discriminatory?
I'll stay when we're done, and if you want to get some information, we're happy to follow up, particularly on the service animal, and if there's issues with hotel ownership, we want to know about it as well.
All right, thank you.
My name is Mason Wardwell. I work for the Hampton Inn. I'm not an owner. It's 47 Barrow Road. Borders the old Holiday Inn. I work there 40 hours a week. I've seen nothing but an uptick. But before I go there, I am a former addict. And the best thing that ever happened to me is getting kicked out of my mother-in-law's house with a 6-year-old son. And I work hard every day. I just bought a house. And it just kills me to watch what's going on next door. There's hope and help for everybody. But we can't keep giving. And I don't have a question, I just want to speak my piece. I'm sorry.
Congratulations on buying your house. Thank you for speaking.
I guess I'm supposed to stuck in there pretty good. I got it. All right, my name is Bernie Graham. I went to school here too. But anyway, this question actually goes out to Mr. Allaire and Mr. Chioffi, and maybe you guys could answer this. Now, I heard Mr. Dumas, I heard Mr. Chioffi, and I heard yourself talk about expenses. Now, I know your expenses went up, probably tripled with the police department since these places opened. Well, the state sent these people here. Should the state be forking out some money to you guys? Are you getting help from the state? That's what I'm asking.
So up to today, no.
Well, then I think that you guys should all get together, write a letter to the governor, or whoever, you know, is in charge of this stuff, and maybe get some help. I mean, they're putting these people.
They sent us a 30 or 40-page contract we had to fill out. We said, forget it. At this point, that wasn't worth the paperwork that was on to get basically $3,000 from.
Well, I understand that. I know how the state works.
At the state level, with paperwork, they can't get the right contract or follow all the rules the state wants. So that's why they can't get money to hotels paid.
Now, you're asking the right questions, okay? So, our job as community leaders is to try to serve the taxpayers of our communities and be financially responsible to those taxpayers. Now, we're losing, and the mayor's losing, we're losing the rooms and meals tax income. We're losing the 1% tax that the town has, which is the source of our funding as well. We don't get any 1% from them. We're losing 1% money from the businesses that are in the vicinity because people don't want to shop there anymore because of the theft and the problems there. And, you know, and another question was asked about, well, how come you don't get police officers? How come you can't get police officers? When you look at the stress that police officers are under, the day never ends. This man has worked a 12-hour day and they were still calling him out on calls today. It's an incredible workload that's being placed on our police officers. Now, when you look at the state money, which is not state money, it's federal money.
It's federal money, right.
Past
It's all
program.
our money.
That's federal, that's our money.
Right.
Federal money passed through. The motel operators are making millions of dollars.
They should report some money
With
for you
program,
guys.
which is doing the job. They're trying to do the job that they were contracted to do, and they're paid quite a bit of money. Mr. Stockton is trying to do the job that he was hired to do, and he's paid, obviously, money to do that. Where is the city being paid any money for the services that the city provides? Where is the town being paid any money? We're not.
Right. So that's something that we should look at. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we've got about a dozen people. The forum was designed to go till 8 o'clock, so we'll handle all the questions expeditiously. Thank you. Next person, please.
Hi, my name is Stephen Lutner. I live at the Quality, and I moved there probably about 4 or 5 months ago. That's the first trip out I've had since COVID. I've been homeless the whole time.
Speak into the mic, thank you.
Yeah, but moving down here to Rutland's like the best thing that happened to me. You know, I've been sober since moving down here. I've gotten away from where I was, and I was able to touch base with the bar program and through the lit team. You know, they continually help steer me. If there's any help with anything that I need, they get me to the right place. You know, and I understand you guys are talking about, you know, you guys are, that's probably about 5% of the population. Maybe, you know, it's not, you can't put everybody there in one box.
Probably 10% cause 95, 99%.
You know, there's 50 different boxes there of people from all over different walks of life, people on Social Security, people, you know, and the quality income that I can see. I know it was really poor, but it's a great place. I mean, you can't even park there, and they're on, you know. Like, you know, really just, I think that where we're going wrong here, and what are we going to do about the fact that, like, these hotel owners are doing the job that they've been, asked to do. Well, why are they making so much money off this? It's like $6,000, almost $7,000 a month for my room. And if there was me and another person in there, it would be like almost like $14,000 per month for my room. $14,000, you take 3 months. You guys can buy me a trailer and a 1/4 acre of land. You know, but I am happy for it because I'll tell you what, my first night at that hotel, I cried. I had blisters on my feet from running and having to do what I had to do to have a roof over my head for the winter in Vermont. You know, it's no joke out there. You know,
well, thank you. Thank you.
There are people that are really, really, really thankful for it, and please don't take that away from us.
Thank you for saying that.
Hello, my name is Bianca Zanella, and I am the Systems Advocate with News Story Center. I live here in Rutland City. And if you don't know News Story Center, we want to be part of the solution. We house survivors of domestic and sexual violence, and housing is just one single service that we provide. So my question, because it's the primary concern for a lot of our victim survivors, is health and safety. There are so many increased risks of survivors being in motels and hotels that have increased risk of abuse, harm, increased risk of human trafficking with exploitation of vulnerabilities, as well as increased risk of sexual assault. And so my question around the health and safety and the habitability standards at the hotels is who and how can we hold the hotels accountable for creating a safe and healthy place where folks are currently living, because the current situation with the security, we've heard multiple reports from victim survivors that it simply feels like a jail and they do not feel any safer. There's increased abuse happening, holes in walls, and banging, and just break-ins, and the list goes on and on. And so who and how can we hold hotels accountable? Because we've heard a lot from holding the folks experiencing homelessness accountable, but what about the hotels? Thank you so much.
Well, one, thank you for your work. We have a strong relationship with the news coordinator at DCF Commissioner. And your organizations I was referring to when we fund significant amounts, so thank you for your work. We take the health and safety in the hotels very seriously. And so when we receive reports of rooms, up to standards or things happening with the owners and not taking care of issues, we reach out to the organizations that regulate hotels and inspect hotels, which is Vermont's Health Department. And we recently had received a concern from someone staying in a room, and then so we worked with Rob, who then had the health department come in and do an inspection of that facility, but then we also had the fire marshal come in, similar to the process that the mayor used earlier when they shut the quality down for some serious fire violations. We take that very seriously, and as soon as we learn something, we do act, and then we require them to correct those things in accordance with the law. And then there have been times, we are stretched for motel capacity, given large numbers, and hotels are voluntarily participating in this program. No hotel is required to participate. Hotels choose to or not to. And so many hotels choose not to. And so when we have so many households, we try to maintain capacity so everyone's always having a safe place to go. There have been situations in other areas of the state where we've stopped working with a hotel owner who's just not been able to make changes consistently and regularly that they need to be compliant with health and safety. And that's the last resort, but we have done during the pandemic, just as the mayor did it here in shutting them down. I mean, that was in conjunction working with, Rob was involved working with the city and the state inspectors and fire inspectors on that as well. And so we take it very seriously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we still have a number of people. I'll ask you to ask a specific question.
My name's Pat Matthews. I live on Dana Avenue. I live within a quarter mile of 3 hotels. Okay, 3. I guess my questions are going to be for whoever can answer it. I do want to support the police. They don't have enough people. I do want to support all the organizations that are here to help any way, shape, or form. But I live right next to 3 of these hotels. I've had my truck broke into. I've had my tools stolen. I work for myself. Okay, so somebody's got to pay for these tools. My business insurance picked up a little bit. My homeowner's insurance picked up a little bit. But I still was out $3 grand or so. It's not cheap. And I do a lot for my community. I do. The police are underfunded as far as all this is concerned. They need to be funded. Rutland Mental Health, they've been here a long time. They have worked hard to work with it. My question is, can we separate the mental health part from the other part, which might be the Social Security part, or it might be people that just need temporary help for a while? I just don't understand how the mental health part isn't separated, I mean, it doesn't seem right. There's people taking advantage of these people that obviously have problems, and that's okay? I mean, as a society, is that okay? I don't think so.
So I think that's for Commissioner Brown.
I mean, you bring up valid points, and I would say none of this is an ideal situation. I mean, I don't think anyone who's homeless and living in this hotel, you ask them where would they want to live, a hotel room is not it.
Right.
But it is providing a safe space now, right, while the state invests significant sums of money to build low homes for,
Okay, you said you had $350 million in
well, that's for
free
rental assistance, but the legislature's appropriated a couple $100 million to build permanent housing because someone may...
So where are they being built? I'm a contractor. Where are they being built?
I mean...
I don't see any in Rutland. I don't see any houses being built in Rutland for it.
Available would need community organizations to step up.
Rents are so high. Rents are so high. People, like the poor lady that makes $800 on Social Security, she's in a hotel because she can't afford a rent. She can afford rent.
There's no housing to fix up, there's nothing there.
And that's why I'm here to say, there are funds available to help your community build new housing projects.
What house do we have to fix though?
Yeah, but when is it coming?
What are the houses?
It's on top right now. When is it coming?
You need to figure out how to separate the mental health, number one, because they're getting taken advantage of. And that hurts me greatly. I hate to see that.
Thank you. That's a point well taken.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next person. And we have limited time, so please ask.
Is there an answer to that? When is it coming?
So you can have your turn to ask that specific question.
All right, real quick, I hear a lot of people saying that I live close to the hotels, my cars be broke into. Let me tell you, these individuals, whether they're in our hotels or they're your neighbor, the problem is the problem.
Correct.
So regardless of where they're located, they're either in one location or they're all over Rutland. Those are the two options. All right, and my other question to Sean Brown is I've heard you say a couple of times that there's regulations and rules for the individuals that are in the hotel. Do you mind, because I'm not aware of that, people in the hotels are not required to work with us. So you're saying there's rules and regulations, so do you mind sharing them with me?
Each hotel has their rules regarding the conduct of their guests, whether they're a part of this program or
Does the state require them to do things? And if so, what is it?
When the rules are waived right now, there are not significant requirements, but those requirements go back into place on July 1st.
So we are stuck in the hotels, fighting a losing battle, and the state is up here saying, oh no, you're not required to work with them. Oh no, you can stay in your hotel. You don't have to go work with them. Is that what you're telling me? Because that's what's going on. Because the state has yet to stand up and require individuals to do what they should be doing, fighting those obstacles that they're facing in their everyday life.
Last fall, when the legislature jumped in and said we want to pause the changes, and then legislated that we put the old wage rules back in place that expire at the end of this month. And so the old rules do go back in that require working with housing case management, that there's a period of ineligibility, they break in or ask to leave the establishment. So those rules go back into place on July 1st.
How about the individuals that are not working with us and they are becoming a problem and we can't do nothing with them because the state don't require? What about that?
And then you can ask them to leave the hotel if they're violating rules, and then we will work to see if there's another hotel that will take them down.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Yeah.
And so there are avenues available, and your team is aware of those. And then on July 1st, they wouldn't be allowed back into the program if they were asked to leave.
Okay, but, all right, the moral of this is if we're sticking these individuals in this hotel and we're paying for their housing, they need to be required to do work.
And under normal program requirements, they do, but they were waived in response to a public health emergency, which changes on June 30th on to July.
Okay, so we're expecting a change in that, that's correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Finally, the last two ask your questions briefly. Thank you.
Okay, my question is for Mr. Brown.
And you are?
My name is Justin Makepeace, and I stay at the Annex building next to the Quality Inn. And with this program, I've gotten a full-time job at Valvoline here in Rutland. I also plan on working at Killington, working 2 jobs. And Life Intervention Team has been with me this whole experience here. And I also got very good mental care with the hospital and everything. So that has all worked out in my case. But one thing that I'm asking is, if I make over $2,000 a month working these jobs and doing what I'm supposed to do and using this program and trying to become a success story, and if I make over $2,000, am I just going to be kicked to the street?
Under the new transitional, the federal rules require you to earn more income and stay in the program, and so that changes on July 1st. So depending on your income level, you should still be eligible for the transitional housing program that starts.
Okay, because I did read on the paper that there was a $2,000 limit.
That's under the GA program rules that go back into effect, but the transitional housing program, under the federal rules, it's the federal rules that for that funding do allow higher income households to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hi, my name is Jennifer and I live here in Rutland. So understanding that there's a line being drawn from June 30th and July 1st, so there's two different programs going on, and rules coming back into effect on July 1st for new GA housing. But for transitional housing, by the fact that it's called transitional housing, how does the state intend to transition people out of housing with services? Right now, what is the average cost of a hotel room with the occupancy agreement, that cost, and then the services, the cost of services to transition people off? What is the end game for this housing, and how do you intend to get there, and what services are the state going to provide? Work opportunities, job placement, work requirements, rehabilitation services, whatever it is, because there has to be an end game, and I haven't heard anything about that.
So some of those dollars that I indicated earlier that we're funding for support services are going, we have an organization here called the Homeless Prevention Center. They're a homeless provider in the Rutland area. They're getting dollars to provide case management to help people find housing and successfully transition into that housing. We're also funding the Community Action Agency, ROC, for housing navigators to do the same work. And ROC also, when they connect, has employment programs and other programs that they connect. And they've actually gone into the motels and provided job fairs, helping do resume work. So we are providing those services now. They're just happening in the offices or on-site hotels, so they're not seen by the public. But that work has been happening throughout the pandemic to the extent we could, depending on the rules in effect at a time in terms of stay home, stay safe. And we have successfully transitioned over 1,800 households across the state into permanent housing. Unfortunately, the housing crisis is so severe that as soon as we move someone out, there's someone new becoming homeless. And so our goal is to try to successfully house everyone in permanent housing, and that's why such a focus of the governor's plan and the legislature was to provide hundreds of millions of dollars to build this housing. But we need communities to step up, to avail themselves, to really work to put those dollars into play and to build that housing in their communities, because it's lacking across the state. The rental market is a very, very few market rate that people can afford available right now. And when the housing market and the price of houses so sky high and the scarcity of them, it's clogging up the whole system across the state. And so it's urgent that we build that permanent housing. And that's what I'm here to share, is those funds are available, and we need developers to step up and apply for those funds to develop projects in the community here in Rutland particularly. Given it's really, this housing crisis is severe and problem.
And what was the average cost per room?
Statewide right now, it's about $100 a night.
No, monthly, right?
Monthly.
For the occupancy agreement?
It would be the daily rate times the number of days in a month.
Yeah, so about $5,000 a month for a room. So the funding that's available.
About $3,000. And your point's well taken, and that's why we want to build this housing as quickly as possible.
Mayor, Chairman, Chief, you're not wrong. You could get paid. We're paying $3,000 a month in room rent, $6,000 a month in a single hotel room for rent. I don't know about anybody else, but if that was my rent, I'd be in the hotels too, because I can't pay $6,000 a month rent.
Right. So it is 8 o'clock, and we're going to have 5 quick questions, and then I'm not going to make any closing comments at the end, but I do have 1 quick question for the Commissioner.
Great. Good evening. Thank you for coming down. I'll start off real quick by...
You are?
Oh, sorry. I'm Mike Dundas. I'm president of the Board of Aldermen. I'm representing myself as an alderman, not as the whole board. So I'll just put that out there, right? This is my perspective and questions. I'll start off with saying I do understand the pressures that DCF, Vermont State Housing Authority, and everybody's under, right? We have staffing shortages down here. I'm assuming you have them up there too, right? When you look at everything you talked about tonight, including the 200 families that you housed in the winter, plus when we have challenges. That problem ebbs and flows, but it never goes away. And as you just stated not 30 seconds ago, there's no housing available. And we need access to those resources to get housing built in the area. So I have 3 questions. You don't have to answer them now. I'd like to get an answer, written answer that we can post somewhere very quickly. The 3 questions are, what are the long-term plans to house those currently living in hotels from the state's perspective, and how are you reaching out to the developers? You spent $10 million in additional resources so far. How many of those were for permits, purchasing land? I mean, I know that we've had the program, but the program's been running for a significant amount of time, and that was federal dollars that the state was granted with to do something. How has that benefited us to move forward to a long-term solution that you already knew needed to be in place prior to this even happening, right? Second question, how will the state address those who disqualify themselves from the program? Will they give them another option so they don't end up back on the street? And will they provide additional support to local law enforcement to make sure that those people who disqualify themselves because they broke the rules aren't causing problems within the community as well, right? I need an answer. That needs to be answered. And then the last question is, how will the state continue to provide assistance to those who need to move them out of the program and into more stable options, including but not limited to workforce development? So we keep talking about rehousing people. That's great. There's a million help wanted signs around here. And yes, the employers aren't hiring people, but that's possibly because the people that are available, that are staying in these hotels that want to work, don't have the training to do that work. There's a ton of federal dollars. Why aren't those being applied to workforce development?
One, if I could just clarify.
Absolutely.
You said something that I think is a myth. And in our experience, many of the rent people staying and homeless people staying in hotels are working. It's just they're not able to afford a place to live based on. So let's just, I just want to be clear. Many of the individuals are working. And I just want to say that.
But they're not earning enough money to pay for a place to live.
That is
right. So that's a workforce development problem.
When we say successfully house someone, there's really 3 legs to that stool.
Right.
One is you need a unit. And those need to be built. 2, many of those households will need a financial subsidy. Those are available. And then the other are services. Right? A lot of, that's a critical time for folks transitioning to permanent housing, and folks need support to make that transition successful, working with a landlord, making sure, that they're able, they find a place where they can get access to their service providers, get to their job, get to their friends and families, and that is all a piece of that, so people can be successful in the long term, and that's what our work revolves around. And I would say in terms of, you have an organization in your community now that you probably are not aware of. It's called the Local Continuum of Care, and it's a part of the housing and urban development requirements for organizations that receive federal HUD funds that work to provide housing services. And there is an active group in your community. Adam's a member of that, and that meets regularly to talk about how they can increase services, and that's the organization, many of the organizations we work through. And so I would urge you to connect with your local continuum, because that's where projects get developed, and that's where the work happens in your local community.
Fantastic. Thank you for the response.
Thank you, Mike. Next.
My name is Chris Warner. I'm a resident of Rutland, 22 Marble Ave to be exact. Went to the last Board of Aldermen meeting late last month, and I was told by the mayor that I should probably come to this to ask a question of being so close to Quality Inn. Hobby Lobby's parking lot abuts to my property. I've seen everything from drug deals. I've had people come over the embankment onto my lawn to defecate while I was in the backyard. We found everything from hypodermic needles to knives. That being said, is there any kind of funding for residents that are dealing with this to put up a fence? I've talked with the general manager, Tom, at Ocean State, great guy. He said he was in contact with corporate, and basically their response is that none of their other stores have any kind of fencing or anything for their neighbors. Why do you need them? Well, I think we have a slightly unique situation. Is there any kind of funds for, along with the other gentleman from Dana Ave, I recently had about $300 worth of tools stolen from my garage. I've got neighbors that have had cameras where showing people coming up to their vehicles, trying to get into their vehicles. There's people, constant traffic coming through my backyard. Hobby Lobby won't, or sorry, Ocean State won't do anything. You know, I mean, they're using their property to come through ours. Is there any kind of funding for us? I mean, that's all we want is some protection. I mean, there's been everything, I mean, there's been 2 homicides at Quality Inn, for Christ's sakes. Something needs to be done for us.
So the question is there funding? Yes, no answers. Anyone have a yes answer? Okay.
I mean, that's a pretty big expense. I mean, to block that off, it would have to go around their whole property, plus their entrance road. And just a section for my yard would be over $5 grand.
Okay, the answer to your question, and a lot of other people that have spoken here have asked, is in the legal system. Because there's nothing in writing except for the Act 250 permit that the organization has, that the hotel has. And the town of Rutland has taken it upon themselves to challenge the permit at the district commission level. And the district commissioner has just ruled that they do need an amended permit because they were in violation of their original Act 250 permit. So when the hearing happens, and of course it goes on a procedure, and everything operates slowly. When there's a hearing, the city and the town will be able to participate at that hearing to ask for conditions to be put on their Act 250 permit to be able to operate. And part of those conditions would be to address some of the problems that you and others have mentioned about proper fencing, about proper delineation of program, about the rules that have to be undertaken in the institution to ensure that the people are on the right path to recovery, rules for performance procedures for the LIP program on employment, and et cetera. All those things can be addressed by the Act 250 Commission. And then it's a legal matter, and they have to do it. But that's the only way that this is going to be, that those kinds of things are going to be solved. They're not solved by zoning or anything else. And as far as the money's concerned, you've heard both the mayor and myself say over and over and over, when we're looking at paying for services, Sean, the state has to fulfill their responsibility to the tax-paying citizens of the communities that they're putting these facilities in. Now, the state has a program called the pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes. I don't see why we can't be paid under the pilot program for this, because essentially the state is creating a facility. They're aggregating homeless people. And when they do that, it's just like they built a facility, only they've just taken it over, basically. There's 150 rooms at the Cortina Inn. We've never been less than 142. And at times, the vouchers have been put in for 160 rooms at the Cortina Inn. There's only 150 there. The state's paying for 160. Figure that out.
Not true.
Next question, please.
Just one more suggestion. As far as a big hot topic like this, it shouldn't be ending at 8 o'clock. You should be hearing every single constituent here that's got problems. You guys are all getting paid for that. Remember that.
Hi, my name is Casey Thomas. I am a resident of Rutland Town. My question, I just want to start off by just reminding folks that at the end of the day, we're speaking about people that have needs, and with the implementation of the stricter guidelines that are taking place on July 1st, I just want to know what the plan is to deal with the unintended consequences that will come with uprooting these people that are already in a negative situation, because it is both my lived experience and understanding that people do not become more successful with less resources.
So we still provide service to those households, even though they're not at a hotel room. We work to try to find them an open shelter that's someplace in the state. We help them with transportation, and we continue to provide case management, other services, as long as they're willing to continue to engage with those services. So our work with that household doesn't stop.
I'm just curious what's going to happen when we have homeless people on the streets of Rutland City and Rutland Town.
We already do.
We do. We do. Just gonna get
Thank you. Good evening, my name is Melissa DeSorda. Although I'm not a resident of Rutland City or Rutland Town, I work for an organization that addresses food security throughout the state of Vermont. And I was intrigued by your comment, Commissioner, that during the first 6 months of the program, there was a food service provided for those households. But after that 6 months, it sounds like there wasn't anything. So I'm curious what the plan is moving forward to be able to provide either food or food access for those living in the hotel housing, and especially the 114 children who are at a very critical developmental stage.
Yes, and so at the department, we run several other programs. We run the SNAP programs through Squares Vermont. And as a part of that, we're providing enhanced pandemic benefits to families, but also to families with kids. They get an additional small pandemic EBT benefit. And so we're issuing out a new round of those. Also, for vulnerable populations, elderly or disabled participating program, we help coordinate the delivery of food Meals on Wheels for other organizations. So we do additional other work. However, the mass feeding that was approved by FEMA is no longer approved and available, so that particular service ended, but all this other work continues.
So just to be clear, and so that I'm not sure if you realize this, but those living in hotel housing aren't allowed to prepare their own food, and 3 Squares Vermont, you're not allowed to purchase prepared food, so they're in a pretty interesting predicament. So we need to be solution driven, and we'll look forward to connecting more about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nick Jones. I live at Maple Street. And when are you guys going to clean up Baxter and Maple Street? They say, when are they going to fund the city police or the drug task force to take care of that?
Well, there are investigations that are actually going on right now, yet we just can't talk about it in public. That's just best practice. We don't want to talk about people who are watching because they might be in this room. They might be friends in this room. So the question is not something I can answer for. I can assure you there are investigations going on in multiple drug houses in the city of Rutland. But again, it comes down to 26 officers instead of 30.
Hey, because I know you guys invested 76 for a while, and now we just had death there.
Yeah, no, it's tragic. And clearly, we hear about this and we do what we can with what we got. It's important that citizens get involved. It's important that they call us. More often than not, honestly, when I'm on a police commission meeting, I'll hear from somebody who will say, there's an issue here. And then when I run the numbers on that location, no one's ever called us. So that's probably the problem. The Trump side of the city and commissioner, you can attest to the same thing. We often turn to people and say, you're saying there's a problem with this address. Yes. How many times do you call us? Well, I have. So that's kind of the problem. I'm not saying every address.
Some are afraid.
Okay, so let's not get into an argument with this. What I'm saying is they're working on it. They're doing their best with it. 26 people don't have enough.
Thank you.
So we have one last question, and you promised it was going to be quick.
Very quick.
You're the last one.
Yes. Sawyer Hathaway from Rutland Town. Question for Don Chioffi. A few years ago, there was a transitional housing project that was built in Rutland Town. Now, that was prior to you being on the board, but you came out as a resident in opposition to that project. I'm just wondering now, as chairman of the board, given the circumstances that we're in now, would you be opposed to another transitional housing facility being built in Rutland Town?
Well, I had a number of questions for Sean. I don't know whether I'm going to get to ask them tonight. Probably not, because he's got a long trip back home.
Correct.
That's correct. Because there are a number of different alternatives in this world to transitional housing. And one of them, and I have to feel the empathy that the rest of the audience felt when that woman, in her best expression, with the death of her son and the problems that she has paying rent, to go back to my own youth, where we rented in this community, for years, my family never owned a house, a home. We rented. And I'm the first family member in my family to own a house. And all I could think of was, with the state spending the kind of money that it's spending on transitional housing from the federal government and or the state government, and when you look at the amounts that are spent, and others have spoken to this, it would seem to me to be much more reasonable and much more productive and much more loving to people that are in this circumstance, to be able to provide a subsidy to apartment owners in this city. Because when I hear it said, well, there's no housing available, that is not true. There is housing available in this city by apartment owners who own duplexes.
So for brevity, the time issue has been mentioned a bit, and it sounds like it's a no, and I would be satisfied with hearing a no. That would be okay.
Those people are tax-paying citizens of our communities. And they're trying to rehabilitate housing and provide it. If they received a subsidy of even a modest amount from the state, which is paying $3,000 to $6,000 per room per month, my God, that woman could afford to have her own apartment and become a contributing member of the community. All right. That to me is transitional housing.
Vouchers cannot find housing anywhere, and that is subsidized housing that is not available anywhere in this city or town.
That's not fair. That's not fair.
We're going to wrap it up. We've been here.
Say we don't contribute.
That's not fair.
It's our time too.
So I have one question.
Maybe when you guys become homeless, you'll see how it feels.
We spent a couple hours here.
Well, you still didn't answer any of
I'm going
our
to ask you
questions.
to be patient and respectful. We appreciate you driving down here for a couple hours. We spent a couple hours. On your way here, you were thinking about what you were going to say and what you were going to hear. Is there anything that you've heard from all the folks here tonight that has altered your point of view in listening to them? And what specifically is going to change as a result of what you've heard tonight and how it's changed your point of view, specifically?
In terms of the value of the program and supporting homeless Vermonters, it was the right, the state made decision, and I think it was the right decision. We are to house people that are homeless during the pandemic to keep them safe. That I still believe that was the right decision. We all recognize the points of view here today that it is very expensive to do that, and it's a lot more expensive than if they were able to have private. We recognize that, and that's why we're working hard to try to transition many people, 1,800 households, into permanent housing, because this is not an ideal long-term solution. And the state, with its own resources, would not be able to sustain this program, the emergency housing program, or the transitional housing program in their current form into the future with state dollars. There's just not enough resources available to do that. That's why it's important that we work closely with this community to try to bring those permanent housing dollars down to the projects to support the building of housing for homeless and low and moderate income Vermonters, so that they have a permanent roof that they can call home over their pay. And that is our goal, and that's what we're working towards.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the three of you who are in line to come up here and talk to Commissioner Brown, because at this time, for the 200 other folks who are here, I want to thank you very much, and I want to tell you thank you very much for the respect and the civility that you've shown tonight. So, last the three of you to come up and talk to Commissioner Brown.
No, I want to
thank you all for
address
coming.
him in the public. I want to address this gentleman.
Well, if anybody would like to stay, I'd like to hear.
We're going to put people in buildings. What buildings? If we have no...
Hold on. I want to address that. Yeah.